With the world being stressful enough, sometimes it's nice to sit back, relax, and enjoy a cute anime for once. But you know what's not very cute? Torture. At least, not normally. Because there is an anime that decided to answer a question that I don't think anyone had. What if torture was wholesome? Well, the answer actually might surprise you, because somehow, some way, they managed to make torture so adorable that it's actually kind of boring. So, while I've enjoyed my fair share of repetitive slice of life shows, let's talk about the anime that managed to make interrogations mundane. 'Tis time for Torture Princess. Before I even begin to dissect this show's plot, let me make one thing clear. I love slice of life anime. If I'm being honest, I can only watch so many intense shows before I have to revert back to a nice, cozy one. So when I saw 'Tis Time for Torture Princess pop up on my anime list, I was pretty intrigued, because despite the description stating the princess that's been held captive by the Demon Lord's army is scheduled to be executed by the Demon Lord's relentless torture, it was listed as a fantasy comedy. So, what gives? Well, as the quotes around torture imply, this anime doesn't involve brutal interrogation scenes. Rather, despite being captured by the Hell Lord, the princess's torture merely consists of being bribed with various amenities in return for intel, and from forcing her to smell delicious foods to tempting her with a fun-filled day at a theme park, the enemies won't be going easy on her. On the surface, this is an interesting premise with a lot of potential. Many of the laughs this show provided came from the simple setup of demonic characters completely and utterly failing at silly torture methods, only for the moved princess to reveal her secrets anyway. So, where did it begin to go wrong? Well, nearly every scene of the show's first 3 episodes consists of the exact same formula. But before I outline step by step the process this show consistently uses, you guys are smart, well-adjusted members of society. Sometimes. So let's see if you can figure out the formula by looking at the show's first 3 scenes. Scene 1 of episode 1 consists of the announcement "'Tis time for Torture Princess," followed by the Grand Inquisitor showing off the Iron Maiden, a medieval looking coffin that's typically filled with sharp spikes, but in this case, it houses a delicious slice of bread. And while the princess's talking sword Excalibur thinks this idea is ridiculous, stating that the princess would never give up intel in return for a mere piece of bread, it immediately cuts to the princess looking quite tempted. She then quickly snaps out of it when a second twist is introduced. The Inquisitor has a plate of leftover beef stew that she's going to dip the bread in. How delicious. This finally causes the princess to break, and rather than just get a slice of bread, they throw a full toast party that ends up being a bit premature, because as it turns out, the intel the Demon Lord receives turns out to be useless, forcing them to start interrogation number 2. It's a rather cute first scene, but now that you have the basic idea of the series down, I'm gonna cover the next one a little bit faster. In scene 2, the Grand Inquisitor announces 'tis time for Torture Princess while holding a menacing looking skewer, but as it turns out, it's just for takoyaki. Somewhat relieved, Excalibur states the princess would never give in to that, or would she? Well, no, she wouldn't just yet, because she's able to come to her senses, only for an additional layer to be introduced. These takoyaki are fresh off the grill, and having never been able to experience fresh takoyaki from a street cart due to her nobility, she quickly provides some new information, and is not only given a fresh octopus ball, but is allowed to grill her own portion of takoyaki. The intel she provides turns out to be useless, so we move on to scene 3. I know this is already getting repetitive, so keep in mind, I'm not cherry picking the scenes here. I'm describing exactly what happens in the order that it happens in the anime. So, if you're somehow not picking up the pattern by this 3rd scene, you might actually really enjoy this anime. For the 3rd interrogation, the Grand Inquisitor announces 'tis time for Torture Princess, but it's midnight, so they must be going for some sleep deprivation strategy, right? Nope, she's simply being tempted with a midnight snack bowl of ramen. Excalibur claims the princess would oh, look at that! But oh wait, she's not giving in just yet, until they introduce a side of rice with nori. As always, she folds. She's allowed to have extra pork with her ramen because the shop is closing, even though it's not a shop, it's a prison cell. And you guessed it, the information ends up being useless to the Hell Lord. Now, for the 5 of you who are still watching this video after that lengthy explanation, first of all, thank you for sticking through that with me. I know it was hard. And you might want to also subscribe while you're still here. Appreciate you. But also, have you noticed that not only are the ideas between each tactic super similar, but every comedic beat is nearly identical? Each scene begins with the Hell Horde announcing 'tis time for torture, princess. An initially daunting item or person will appear, only for it to be revealed that it's not actually scary and it's just some type of bribe. The princess's talking sword Excalibur will make some snarky comment, which in the actual anime is much longer than the monologue I even described. It's actually more something along the lines of, haha, you think this will be enough to tempt the prince? Why am I talking like that? Hard cut to the princess looking tempted, only for her to snap out of it, a second more tempting twist to be introduced, and for her to confess. She's almost always given more than what she was promised, and the intel she gives ends up being useless to the Hell Lord, causing us to repeat the cycle over and over and over and over. Not only is this exact formula used in all 3 episodes, but it's also used multiple times per episode. And while fans of this show are now probably typing, clearly Sway didn't watch the 2nd episode because they introduced brand new forms of torture that don't even belong food. What? that would be a real comment. Because they involve new forms of torture that aren't even food related. And my response to that is pretty simple, actually. You're kind of missing the point here. These tactics all being food related isn't even the main issue. Because whether it be tempting her with a fighting game or a hug from a giant woman, each scenario still follows the same structure with the same jokes in the same order. So is my point just that no anime should ever follow a formula? Well, no, actually. In a way, I believe having predictability in a slice of life anime is part of what makes it so comforting. Instead, where this anime fails is in its implementation of the formula. And to show exactly where this anime went wrong, we should look at a formula that was done correctly. Love is War begins as a series filled with rather repetitive chapters, with each scene revolving around its 2 main characters, Kaguya and Shirogane, fighting to outwit each other and trick the other one into confessing. Much like 'tis time for torture, princess being broken into a series of interrogations, early Love is War scenes are a series of bite-sized mind games. However, while every scene in 'tis time for torture, princess follows a nearly identical pattern, with twists being predictable in both their timing and execution, every Love is War scene is unique thanks to its ever-changing framing. Sometimes, Kaguya and Shirogane's battles will revolve around a trap meticulously set by one of them, while others start as sporadic moments initiated by the show's agent of chaos, Chika. One battle will involve a simple game and end within a few minutes, while others take a significant amount of time to conclude, and the results of the battle have actual consequences in future episodes. So, while Kaguya and Shirogane begin as extremely predictable characters, they continue to evolve and change over time. Kaguya learns to act less cruel, becoming less sheltered as she learns more about love and relationships. Shirogane, on the other hand, is shown to become increasingly humble, discovering that, despite being a genius, he has a lot to learn about love as well. In this way, Love is War's formula acts more like an algorithm, and while many of its scenes consist of the same basic building blocks, these blocks evolve and shift to fit each scene, and after twisting its initial premise to the maximum, Love is War eventually ditches the initial framing method entirely, dropping the one-off gags in favor of longer overarching arcs and stories. So, why do I bring up Love is War when talking about 'tis time for torture, princess? Technically, while the show still has plenty of episodes to evolve, I just don't see it happening. If you look at the poster for the anime, there are a lot of characters that haven't been introduced yet, and while you could read it as a good sign, the introduction to new characters so far has only been used as a crutch to stop the series from seeming even more repetitive than it already is. They have introduced at least 7 different interrogators in the first 60 minutes, and so far, while they all have small differentiating factors, the setup and punchline between interrogators has stayed the same, and this adherence to the same old plot points gets super old super fast. But while I'm critical of the anime, I could absolutely see these scenes working in manga form. With weekly magazines, you have to wait a minimum of 7 days before reading the next chapter, assuming you're reading it live, obviously. So by the time you get to the next one, it feels a bit more new and refreshing. But when the anime consecutively strings multiple of these similar scenes together, together to fill its runtime, it becomes significantly more noticeable just how derivative the author is being. You can't just replace ramen with a hug or games with a theme park and expect the anime to feel different. When explaining why the princess's intel is useless, there's only so many times I can hear the demon lord say things like, cram school is on Wednesdays, I'm too scared to handle their ultimate weapon, the intel I told my daughter to get from the princess is too cute, so I'm just gonna hang it up instead. I know it's supposed to be ridiculous and that's the joke, but while it's funny the first, fifth, maybe even 10th time, it's definitely far overplayed by the 20th. I know this video has largely come off as negative, because it is, but I watch a lot of slice of life anime because I genuinely enjoy them, and it hurts me that a show with such a fun premise ended up being so bland. While the anime has made me laugh enough times to give it a few more episodes, unless it starts making some major tweaks to its formula, I'm gonna have to skip the rest of this one. But as always, make sure to subscribe if you like these videos, comment to let me know what I should talk about next, and if you maybe want to see me continue to complain about anime, try checking out one of these videos.